Somewhere off a highway exit, behind a chain link fence, sits a grid of orange metal doors. No cashier, no customers walking in and out, no lights on inside because there's nothing alive in there to light. To a lot of investors, this is the perfect business. You build a box. You rent the box. The box does not call in sick, does not need a lawyer, does not leave a bad review because the fries were cold. It just sits there, collecting rent from people too busy, too sentimental, or too disorganized to throw their stuff away. That's the pitch. Passive income, wrapped in corrugated steel. The reality is a little less passive. Self-storage is a real estate business, a logistics business, and whether owners like it or not, a debt collection business, all running out of the same fenced lot. The American self-storage industry is enormous, tens of billions of dollars in annual revenue, spread across roughly 50,000 facilities nationwide. That is more storage facilities than there are Starbucks locations. The demand driver isn't really stuff, it's life transitions. Divorce? Downsizing? A cross-country move. A business that's outgrown its garage. A college kid going home for the summer. Storage rent gets paid by people going through change, which is one reason the industry barely blinked during recessions. People don't stop moving, dying, divorcing, or decluttering just because the economy is soft. The psychology is simple and slightly uncomfortable. Once someone's belongings go into a unit, inertia takes over. Most renters plan to stay 3 months. The industry average is closer to 2.5 years. Before a single door rents, the money bleeds out in a very specific order. Land first. A viable site, visible from a road, zoned commercially, ideally within 3 miles of rooftops, runs anywhere from a few $100,000s in a rural market to several million near a metro area, then permitting. Self-storage zoning fights are notoriously slow because neighbors hate looking at a metal box farm from their kitchen window. 6 months to 2 years of entitlement work is normal before a shovel touches dirt. Then, construction. A single-story drive-up facility runs roughly $35 to $55 per square foot to build. A modern climate-controlled multi-story facility, the kind that competes in dense urban markets, can run $70 to $110 per square foot for a mid-size 60,000 square foot facility. All in development costs commonly land between $4 million and $8 million before a single unit is rented. And during that entire build-out window, the loan is accruing interest against zero revenue. Storage looks equipment, light compared to, say, a car wash. There's no wash tunnel, no boiler, no chemical injection system. But the infrastructure bill is still real. Security is the biggest line item. Perimeter fencing, keypad gate access, individual unit door alarms, and a camera system covering every row, often 40 to over 100 cameras on a mid-size property, feeding a monitored network video recorder. Then there's climate control. HVAC system size to keep humidity. Sensitive units in the 55 to 85 degree range, which matters enormously in markets prone to mold and rust damage, and increasingly matters to renters storing electronics, furniture, or documents. Add a keypad, controlled elevator for multi-story buildings, a small rental office, signage, paving, and site lighting on photocell timers running dusk to dawn. This is where the passive myth quietly dies. Property insurance on a storage facility isn't cheap. The combination of a large uninsurable structure, fire risk from stored items, and liability exposure pushes annual premiums into 5 figures. Even on a modest property, property taxes reassessed periodically, based on the facility's improved value. Scale up right alongside the owner's success. The better the facility performs, the more the county wants. Utilities run lighter than most commercial real estate, but climate-controlled buildings carry real electric bills for HVAC, especially in summer, running climate-controlled units in Texas or Florida. Then there's software. Every serious operator runs a property management platform for online rentals, gate access control, and automated billing, typically priced per unit per month, which adds up fast across a 500-unit facility. Maintenance is unglamorous but constant. Door track repairs, gate motor failures, pothole patching, faded line striping, and inevitably pest control. And then the cost: nobody puts in the brochure, delinquency, and lien processing. When a renter stops paying, the facility can't just toss their stuff. State law dictates a notice period, a lien filing, and eventually a public auction, all of which costs staff time and legal paperwork before the unit can be rented. Storage pricing isn't set once. It's managed like an airline seat. Revenue management software adjusts street rates daily based on occupancy, so the price to rent an empty 10x10 unit on a Tuesday might be different from the price on a Friday. Here's the part that actually builds the profit margin. Existing tenants get quiet. Incremental rate increases, often 8 to 12% annually. Buried in a mailed notice, most people don't read closely. Because of that inertia we mentioned earlier, the overwhelming majority of renters simply pay the new rate rather than go through the hassle of moving their stuff again. On top of base rent, operators layer in mandatory tenant insurance or protection plans, administrative fees, and late fees. Smaller line items individually, but collectively they can add 10 to 20% on top of the advertised rental rate. Here's the structural insight that explains why this business model works at all. Self-storage runs on almost no labor. A single 500 to 800 unit facility can be operated by one part-time manager, sometimes remotely, with the rest handled by a call center, an app, and a keypad. Compare that to a hotel with a similar footprint, which needs housekeeping, front desk staff, and maintenance around the clock. That's the entire financial story of self-storage in one sentence. It converts what is normally a labor-intensive hospitality style business, housing someone's belongings, into something closer to a vending machine. The margins aren't high because storage is a great service. They're high because nobody has to be there to provide it. Storage development is typically financed with a construction loan that converts to permanent financing once the facility stabilizes, meaning it hits a target occupancy, usually somewhere around 85 to 90%. Getting there is the dangerous part. The lease-up period from grand opening to stabilization commonly takes 2 to 4 years. During that stretch, the facility might be servicing debt on a $5 million loan, while only generating enough rent to cover a fraction of it, forcing the owner to inject additional cash or draw down reserves. Loan terms for stabilized storage assets tend to be favorable compared to other commercial real estate. Lenders like the low labor cost and diversified tenant base. But favorable still means real monthly payments on real principal. For 20-plus years, regardless of how full the units are that month. Self-storage demand isn't as recession-proof as the industry likes to claim. It's transition-dependent, and transitions slow down when people stop moving. There's mild seasonality, rentals spike in summer, tied to the broader moving season, and dip in winter. But the bigger long-term risk is supply. Because storage facilities are relatively simple to build compared to other commercial real estate. Popular markets can get overbuilt fast. A single new competing facility a mile away can force an entire submarket into a rate war. There's also concentration risk in the tenant base itself. A meaningful share of units, sometimes a fifth or more, are rented by small businesses and contractors storing equipment or inventory, meaning a local economic downturn hits storage demand indirectly through its commercial tenants, not just its residential ones. Best case, a well-located facility in a growing suburb, built for around $6 million, stabilizes at 90% occupancy within 3 years, generates $900,000 to $1.1 million in annual revenue against maybe $300,000 in operating expenses, and eventually sells to a REIT or private equity roll-up at a valuation of $10 million or more. That's the outcome the YouTube ads are selling. Acceptable case, a smaller facility in a secondary market takes closer to 5 years to stabilize, generates modest but steady cash flow after debt service, enough to cover the mortgage with a few $1,000s a month left over, and functions more like a slow appreciating retirement asset than a cash machine. Failure case, overbuilt submarket. A competitor undercuts rates before stabilization. Lease-up stalls at 60% occupancy for years, and the owner is stuck feeding the loan out of pocket every month until either the market recovers or the property is sold at a loss to whoever's willing to take on a half-empty facility and a debt service headache. The spread between those three outcomes usually comes down to one decision made before construction ever started. Self-storage isn't a passive income fantasy, and it isn't a scam. It's a real estate development business wearing a vending machine costume. The labor efficiency is genuinely real, and that's what makes the margins attractive once a facility is full. But once it's full, is doing enormous work in that sentence. Getting there requires several $1 million of upfront capital, 2 to 4 years of lease, up risk, and a site selected correctly before a single door goes up, because no amount of clever pricing software fixes a facility built in the wrong location. The people who make real money in self-storage aren't the ones who found a magic passive asset. They're the ones who treated it like what it actually is. A capital-intensive development project that happens to need almost nobody to run it once it's built, right?